Brakes. I think it's safe to say brakes are one of the most important parts of a race car. Although it's historically the engine that takes the credit, it's good brakes which make a fast car a good race car. For many years, brakes somewhat lagged behind in development. From their beginnings as a wooden block to scrub the tires for speed, to leather straps which cinched the axle, up through drum brakes which finally provided some real stopping power, and onwards to discs and now carbon fiber and crazy materials that last for hours and hours on end. I recently watched the documentary 24-Hour War in preparation for my 24 Hours of Le Mans race for my 1966 season, and in that documentary, Dan Gurney talks a lot about the brakes with the Ford GT, and it's true. For that race, one of the major advantages Ford had over Ferrari in 1966 was how quickly they could change the brakes on a pit stop, and throughout the course of the 24 hours, Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon's Ford GT40 changed the front and rear pads several times throughout the race, and even changed the front rotors once. And an updated design by the Ford engineers and Carroll Shelby made it easier for them to actually swap out the rotors, something that used to take many minutes now only took a few. Now, I'm not sure if I trust the validity of it, but during the documentary, Dan Gurney talks about how he came up with a special braking technique. His special braking technique was to really downshift aggressively coming down the Mulsanne straight into the Mulsanne corner to slow the car down without having to use the brakes too much. This braking technique is known as engine braking, and I'm fairly certain Dan Gurney didn't invent it, but he probably circulated the idea to use it a lot. It's something that's a necessary part of race driving and has been used all throughout history, from the early days of racing even to the present day. The concept is simple: downshift heavily into a braking zone to use the friction of the engine and RPM to help slow the car down. This both makes it so you don't have to use the brakes quite as much, but also helps slow the car down in a more predictable manner. This has for many years been a strategy for going fast, but it was also used a lot, especially in the early days of racing, to help preserve the brakes overall. With big drum brakes that would overheat easily, it was important to use any means necessary to keep the brakes nice and cool so that you could use them when you really needed them for overtakes or if you messed up a corner or something. Engine braking is still heavily used in modern Grand Prix racing to both help slow the cars down, but also now, rather than saving the brakes being the specific use, it's used to recover energy to give those hybrid engines their kick. So this isn't actually a video about the history of brakes. I'm sitting here at Silverstone 1967 version in Assetto Corsa and one of my favorite 1950s Grand Prix cars. The whole thing got me thinking, seeing Dan Gurney talk about engine braking at Le Mans, and having done Le Mans recently, I was thinking a lot about how engine braking is used in older Grand Prix racing to save these big drum brakes, and was thinking a lot about the 1955 season I did in Grand Prix Legends, where saving brakes was really important there, because that sim, that mod, models brake fades. You have to be really careful about the brakes, and it's an element, some strategy in racing that's actually quite a lot of fun to try to get right. Engine braking and effectively using the engine for braking is definitely a skill and something you would have wanted to practice. So as a fun experiment, I thought I could take it to the max. How fast could you actually go around a circuit without using the brakes at all? I'm sure there's stories out there in history of drivers really limping their cars home to the finish line. I thought it might be kind of a fun challenge, making laps around this circuit in this car with no brakes at all. We'll pull away here from the pits, and I do want to do a couple laps with brakes just to give you an idea of the speed and things that you can carry, because this is an old Grand Prix car and one that you definitely have to drive way differently than a modern car. You have to brake very early. The brakes, even though I have them currently, they're not as good as a modern brake, certainly. Big drum brakes. I don't think Assetto Corsa actually models the overheating and the fade of the brakes themselves, or at least not as extreme as it seemed to be in real life. But we'll come and break down here for Beckett's. You want to get all your braking done in a straight line, then get on the throttle and help turn the car, get it onto hanger straight here. All right, come to the end of hanger straight. We'll get hard on the brakes. And we will use the engine braking, downshifting to second gear here. I broke quite a bit early, but then we can get on the power early, help rotate the car, and get it onto the next straightaway. Bit of oversteer there on the exit. Alright, so we'll come through Woodcote here and try to get a lap down with brakes, just driving as I would normally. Still need to brake very early, like I said. The car's brakes, although we have them, they're not anything like modern brakes. Down to second gear here for the first corner. Run a bit wide, but get on the throttle, help rotate the car. Silverstone, you just want fast runs out of every corner because it's such long straightaways here. Get up to fourth gear for Maggots. Just touch the pavement on the inside there. Now heavy on the brakes for Beckett's here, down to second gear. Come right to that wall on the inside. Not quite close enough on this lap. Bit of oversteer on the exit there. Up the gears now for the hanger straight. Just a fast flick to the left there before we get on the straight proper. And now fourth gear flat out. Should get over 130 miles an hour. Actually geared a little bit short with this 4-speed. We'll brake there heavy then. Down to second gear. Might be able to brake a bit later. Right out to the edge of the track. Maybe a kick of dust from behind. And down the second straightaway now. All the way back up the gears. So giving the whole car a workout. Lap after lap here at Silverstone. Alright, go through the fast flick to the left here. Try not to understeer off the track. Get on the throttle. You can see how much the car rotates on the throttle. That's why you always want to get your braking done in a straight line in these cars. Alright, then we'll come to Woodcote, down to third gear. Try to find some sort of entry. It's so hard around this corner. Gonna push a bit wide, but back on the throttle to help steer through and come across the line. So a 151 flat, essentially. Not a great lap. Could definitely do a bit faster than that, but a fairly good lap, I think, indicative of a pace I guess you would feel comfortable doing during a race when you're not just doing qualifying laps. But heavy use of the brakes there. You can see going into the corners and slamming on the brakes essentially and downshifting. Still using the engine quite a bit to slow the car down. So predicting that we're going to be a lot slower, obviously using engine braking, but how much slower will we really be? Alright, so back now at Silverstone, and I've had the mechanics do something that you would never do in real life. Gosh, sim racing's awesome because we can do stuff like this, but I've disconnected the brakes, and just for dramatic effect and so that you know I'm not cheating, they're really disconnected. I'll roll down the ramp here at Silverstone. We'll try to stop the car using the brakes, and all the way to the floor, not doing anything. So we don't have brakes at all on our Maserati now. We're going to have to rely purely on the engine to slow us down. Would be a terrifying thing to do solo, never mind in a race itself. You can pretty aggressively rev this car. I think we can go up to 8,500 or so on the RPM gauge, and you would definitely use a ton of the engine while driving to slow the car down. Very inefficient for fuel saving or anything like that, so you can't really engine brake aggressively if you need to preserve the engine very well or save a lot of fuel. Alright, but we'll come down to Beckett's, and so it's going to all be, I'm tempted to step on the brake there. It's going to all be just about making sure our apex speed is slow enough. Almost want to be a little more conservative getting into the corner just to make sure we're not going to run a bit wide. We'll come onto hanger straight. I think this is going to be the hardest part overall to try to slow down for. We'll get up to fourth gear here. Over 100 miles an hour with no brakes. We'll get it down the gearbox. You can see the miles per hour pretty aggressively dip there once we get it into gear. If we put the clutch down, we just start rolling. So obviously we don't lose any speed. Got a little bit of rolling friction with the tires, but not that much. That's why they have that weird camber on the front. And I was able to get the car slowed down there without brakes at all. Throttle away then. So it's all going to be about finding where that braking marker is and seeing how far we can push it. I don't want to over rev the engine too much. It does have a limiter on it in the sim, so I guess I could really throw it up the rev range. But there we go. First gear slows the car down pretty well. So we'll come around through the final couple of corners. These ones don't require too much braking, so it's actually almost going to be business as usual. You might dip on the brakes here just to get the car to turn in, but no issues there at all. Wood coat definitely has a little bit of braking, so we'll downshift a bit early. It's kind of a lot easier to drive with just 2 pedals. You don't need to worry about a 3rd pedal at all, but there we go, way up the rev range. Oh, we're a bit hot there. Car grips up though and turns quite nice, quite a lot of wheel in it. Get on the throttle there to help get the car to turn around. All right, so starting the first timed lap, and hopefully I can complete it without running off the track, but you may see everything goes sideways here. Down to 2nd gear, down to 1st, lock up the rears. Oh, come so close to that wall on the inside. Able to get the car through, really revved it out there in 1st gear. I think very much near the red line. Mr. Maserati is sweating right now. All right, heavy down the gears. I went really fast here into Beckett's. Oh, and I really want that brake pedal, but it doesn't exist. This would also be extremely punishing on the gearbox. Throttling into 1st like that, it's probably will work for you a couple times before you start shearing teeth, depending on how strong it is overall. Just a 4-speed, so potentially quite thick gears. All right, but flat out, start braking plenty early, or not braking, just getting down the gears. That was really close to the very, very red line, down to 1st. So it seems like I can jump down a gear when we're at about 7,000 RPM. And that'll give me just enough to get back up. All right, down to 2nd gear, very, very early here. It was much more aggressive into some of the earlier corners. To figure out what the apex speed is on some of these corners too. It looks like it's about 60 miles an hour there through Club. We'll come up to Abbey here. Keep it in 4th gear, don't need to worry about braking here. Just get the car settled on entry. Come to Woodcote. So coming to the end of the first lap, we haven't hit 2 minutes yet, so we might be able to do a sub 2 minute. Still a bit fast coming into Woodcote. It feels like it's just, you don't have any safety, anything to slow you down a little extra if you need it. But just about 2 seconds, so 9 seconds or so slower without brakes. Let's see if I can improve that here at all. All right, down to 2nd gear for the first turn. A little fast coming in, so I'm going to shoot wide. Ooh, over the road there. Alright, try to plan for Beckett's braking. Or starting to downshift. I gotta stop saying braking. Downshifting before the 2 signs there. Need to rev match a bit better going into 1st just so that we can not spin the car out, but it is helping slow the car down. Using some of your lateral grip can also help. Onto hanger straight, running a bit wide. Need to try to get the acceleration zones tidy for the best lap time. I pushed it a bit later that time. At the end of hanger straight, down the gears, just trying to maximize the revs. Might not even need 1st gear at the end of hanger straight. We'll come into Club. It's going to be a bit faster. Able to get it slowed down for the apex, so I kept it in 2nd that time. I just felt a bit out of control slowing down, but probably faster overall. Yeah, up quite a bit on my speed. Just saw it there, 3 seconds. Down to 3rd gear. Getting on the throttle just to help kill the understeer, come across the line. 157, so we're already in the 50s. Keep at it, see if I can improve. Oh, we're a bit fast here. Come down, over rev a bit in 1st gear, but keep it out of the hay bales and things. All right, so I'm going to continue around and see if I can improve the laps overall. See how far I can push it down the end of hanger straight. Bit early there, just kind of throw it into 3rd gear. Try to get it to slow down. Ooh, quite quick here, coming into Cops. Oh, just understeer away. Oh, into the hay bales. No. Yikes, those are some pretty sturdy hay bales. All right, we'll come out and try a few more laps. Ooh, almost forgot, I don't have any brakes. So come down, into Beckett's. Almost went just driving my normal out lap, get into 1st gear just to throw it sideways. 1st gear is kind of your savior, but again, I don't think it would hold on in the real car. I think you'd suddenly have a bunch of gearbox coming out the back. Oh, quite quick again down the end of Hanger Straight. All right, skirt the hay bales. This is the Joker lap around Silverstone. All right, but down to third gear for Woodcote. We'll see how I can do. Obviously, the first corner into Copse is also a bit scary. All of them are a bit scary. I don't have brakes. Ooh, and a Grand Prix car from the 1950s. All right, down to third gear. Oh, we're way too quick this time. I had to go on the brake pedal despite it not being able to do anything and just understeer my way off into the hard hay bales once again. All right, so I think I've figured out a little bit when I can shift down the gears just watching my speed rather than my RPMs, which is cheating a little bit. But around 72, 73 miles an hour, I can go into first, and it will still really slow the car down if I'm not rev matching, but it's not redlining the thing, so hopefully save the engine, if not the gearbox. Get it onto the straightaway. It looks like I'm 7/10 up somehow. Push it right to that second road. Oh gosh, quite quick. This is probably gonna be too quick. Understeering off. Oh man. All right, coming to Woodcote. Hopefully can get a good lap. I think I'm, like I said, figuring it out somewhat. And it's just getting those, I guess, off-throttle downshift markers right. We'll come down to the first corner here a little bit before the 200 board. Well over 120 miles an hour through the front straightaway there. Oh, we're gonna understeer a little bit. No, not really. Onto the apex there. That almost looked like I knew what I was doing. All right, come through there, up the gearbox then. Coming to Maggots and Beckett's. Want to go right around the 200, although I'm got quite a bit of speed. I'll do it a little bit earlier this time. Aggressively down into second gear. I'm going to be a bit hot here, but get it into first. Oh, slide the car through Beckett's. Pick up the throttle then. Bit of a hot entry. But now get it onto Hanger Straight. Trickiest part here. All the way up the gears. And I've been using these entry roads as a marker. So we probably want to start letting off right about here. I was pushing it a bit further than I was before, but now just try to lose as much speed as possible. I'll use this runoff road here to try to help. There we go, got it slowed down. Maybe a little bit too much actually that time. Oh no, gonna run wide. Okay, right against the edge, not quite. Right down to second gear. Into club. I'm kind of apexing a bit too early because I'm scared to run deep and try to arc it in because I don't have the brakes to help pivot the car and get that right line. So I'm kind of using the steering as well to scrub off speed, but I guess anything and everything. Oh, we're gonna run wide through Abbey. Just a little off-roading in our Maserati, not too bad. Bit late there into Woodcote. Got distracted. Gotta stay on top of it. There's just no saving anything. Come across the line, 155. That's a lot quicker than I thought I was gonna go. Let's keep going. All right, come down to club. Second gear, I just want brakes so bad. You get that feeling you get when you go over the hill on a roller coaster. Or if you're in a passenger seat of a car and somebody's driving and they're just not seeing something and you want to push through the floorboards. It's that same feeling. Come through Abbey though, this is going to be a really good lap. Quite deep into Woodcote. No, it's going to be quite long. Try to step on the throttle a bit, understeer our way through, but get the car to rotate. There we go. Come across the line. 153.2. I'm getting close to my brakes time. All right, come to the end of another lap, and hopefully this one will be good. This lap I'm on right now is actually not too bad, but just need to do a smooth lap. I think I've got quite a lot of pace in the car, and dare I say, I think I could actually beat my brakes time, which is not a good time, but it's not a terrible one either. But come across the line there and start another lap. Just don't go too deep here into Copse. All right, down to second gear. There we go, rotate. Bit wide on the apex, but nice speed through there. Up the gearbox now. Come to Maggots and Beckett's. Fourth gear on the way in. Throw it towards the apex. And then quickly down to third to start slowing the car. Down to second as soon as we get out of the red. And just turn the car in. Try to find some sort of apex. Get on the throttle, help rotate. There we go. That was quite smooth. Now up the gearbox for Hanger Straight. Up up to fourth gear. A little bit down on my best, but I know the first sector on my best lap was quite good. Just try to spot some sort of braking here, not too late. Right down third gear. Come on, down second. Come in. Oh, to stow here. Understeer so much the way through, that's going to be quite slow. So pick up the speed again now towards club. This one you can go a bit deeper into, I know. All right, get it down to second gear for stow. Oh, it just feels very slow. There's no way to slow the car down quickly, so I gotta use the space I have. Now back on the throttle. Be quite fast here to the line. We'll get a split in a second. Oh, I'm still down just ever so slightly. Come through Abbey, actually keep it in third gear, help rotate the car up to fourth. Right out to the edge. Kick up a little dust there. If I can get a good run through Woodcote, we could get it. Understeering our way through though. But pick up the throttle, come across the line. Yeah, all right. A 152.3. I'm only 1.2 seconds off the lap I did with brakes. Now, I've done a bit of running around this track over time, and I think I've gotten in the mid 140s before with brakes. So way off the speed that you could run properly, and I'm sure many of you out there could run way quicker than that. But a 152 with no brakes, it makes me feel confident about being able to drive if we did have a lot of brake fade. That ended up being a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be, but a 152.3 I think is pretty good. I'm interested to see if anybody else wants to try this out there. I used the green track setting on the stock Assetto Corsa Kunos 1967 Silverstone. It's the Maserati 250F 6-cylinder version that I used, but very interested to see if anybody else wants to try and compare. I feel like a 152.3 is not too bad overall. It's a big challenge to just get the braking zones right and totally different driving style with the lines, but I think it's possible. I think this proves it's possible to do decent laps without brakes, but you would absolutely be a hazard in a race condition racing against other cars, and very easy to see why this probably wasn't legal to do, but I'm sure some drivers throughout history had to do it. So a Maserati 250F driven without brakes at Silverstone. I think I'll be happy to turn the brakes back on, but very fun to do. It'd be interesting if some other sims would model brake fade. I think Automobilista, the first one, does. I'm not sure about the second one, but it's a really interesting part of these older cars that gives them a lot of character and helps separate, I guess, some of the novice drivers from the more experienced. Just a fun little experiment, nothing too serious. I think the gearbox would take an absolute punishment through something like this and maybe not even survive itself. And I think this would be a lot harder at pretty much any other track. Silverstone, I chose it specifically because it's a pretty easy track to drive, and although it has a couple corners which do require a lot of braking, it's one that you have plenty of space and runoff and all of that. So this would be probably impossible at some of the other tracks that exist, especially ones with any elevation changes or things, namely the Nürburgring. So if anybody out there wants to try driving a car like this around the Nordschleife with no brakes, I triple dog dare you. So that's it for this one. Just something a little fun, something random I thought of, and I think Gurney was a little bit full of it, saying he came up with engine braking, but he certainly noted its importance in winning races, and it's still very important to this day. And look, you can actually drive a car with no brakes at all around Silverstone. Anyways, thank you for watching. This is GP Laps, and I'll see y'all again next time.